big sky, big potential. In association with Mills and Reeve, this is Eastern Promise. Achieving more together. Welcome to the podcast that amplifies the awesome of the East of England, wherever and whenever it may be found. And today you'll find our region's thought leaders in Leeds for day 2 of UKREiiF. I'm Mike Rigby, and you join me for the second day of the UK's Real Estate Investment and Infrastructure Forum. We'll be hearing from special guests, delegates and speakers in our region's pavilions and across the Royal Armouries, whether the Red Zone's Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, Oxford-Cambridge Growth Corridor in the pink, or the purple patch for Norfolk and Suffolk. No need to dash around, because I've done that for you. It's the second day of UKREiiF. Brace yourselves and stand by for pulse-pounding, alliterative action on this extra special episode of Eastern Promise. It's day 2 of UKREiiF, and if you thought day 1 was a packed affair, you ain't heard nothing yet. My day began at the Norfolk and Suffolk Unlimited Pavilion, where the topic, Coastal Communities Rising, highlighted the nascent potential of our coastal places and people. In the chair, Lowestoft MP Jess Asato, and here's a flavour of the discussion.
This event is called Coastal Communities Rising, from energy investment to place-led regeneration. My name is Jess Asato. I am the very proud Member of Parliament for Lowestoft, the most easterly coastal town of the UK. I'm also the co-chair of the East of England All-Party Parliamentary Group. We know that energy investment has brought unprecedented attention as well as capital to our coast. And what we're here to explore today is to look at how that investment is being translated into lasting place-led growth, regeneration, housing and economic resilience.
Previously, coastal communities attracted tourism until kind of the change of kind of cheap flights and the like. And as a country and a society, we haven't really had the ability to kind of reimagine these, whether that's through funding or constraints elsewhere. So that's the first thing we need to look at. It's that effectively of understanding what the new offering is in these areas and providing some diversity and versatility for those communities. Too much at the moment in those areas, it's a tourist-based approach, or trying still to be a tourist-based approach with low seasonal work, which leads to that deprivation. So it's understanding what the drivers are. So is it bringing the area out of deprivation, improving those markers, improving employment, which is evidently required, and then also looking at the housing side as well. So it's looking at those broad markers and understanding how we can effectively set ourselves a mandate over a 5, 10, 15-year period to bring our coastal communities back up to their previous glory.
You know, the southern North Sea has been the dominant location for offshore wind for a number of years and continues to see the dominant amount of activity. You've got Sizewell C, which is a kind of enormous kind of energy project going on in Suffolk, plus a lot of other renewables projects. And I think what we see along the coast is that the ports are often the kind of nodes of economic activity that link those big clean energy projects to local opportunities for growth.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the question was, is the narrative strong enough? No, it's not. But to build on Steve's point, neither is the influence and engagement. So, we talked about going scheme by scheme with those good news stories. Equally, we're going area by area, scheme by scheme, topic by topic in our influence strategy. And if we just step back and look at that collective story of economic impact, I think there's huge assumptions and stereotyping made about our region, about Norfolk and Suffolk, and people think there's the kind of the posh bit and the deprived bit and lots of green space, and actually the reality is what we've got is really vibrant communities and loads of small and large interventions that are making a really big difference. Just a very, very quick small one. Tiny development, 5 units. You talk about that in this noisy arena and you'd kind of get laughed out of the pavilion, wouldn't you? Because 5 units is nothing. But those units brought 3 families back into the area that had been priced out. They housed the chef from the local village pub that couldn't get a chef and was going to close. So the economic impact of those 5 houses is significant, but that story just gets lost in the wind. And I think we've got to stop the stories getting lost. We've got to tell them collectively and coherently, and we've got to have a really joined-up approach to influence and engagement.
That was Chris Wheeler, Head of Land and Development for Wilmot Dixon, Steve Beale, CEO of Freeport East, and Amanda Leonard of the Norfolk and Suffolk Housing Partnership. Afterwards, I caught up with Jess to find out more.
Well, if I were going to say one word, it would be vision. So you need to have a really good vision for a coastal community and how it's going to be able to be regenerated and invested in, but also collaboration. So we heard a brilliant example of a housing developer investing but collaborating with Great Yarmouth Borough Council to create a really exciting project at North Quay. I can't wait to see it. It's going to be generating lots of jobs, and I think it's a fantastic example of what happens when you've got strong local leadership, good local political vision, but that comes together with the private sector capital and investment to create something that's really going to change the fortunes of that community.
What's your next step going from this meeting?
Well, I think we're going to continue in Parliament as Labour MPs to the battle cry for a coastal strategy, because what I've heard from this morning has been that having that UK-backed government coastal strategy is really important for investors to feel confident that actually this is going to be something that's long-term and not just for the next few years. But also that there's a lot to learn from across Norfolk and Suffolk in terms of projects that are already underway. So I'm really here to nab lots of people and invite them to Lowestoft.
Jess Asato, Member of Parliament for Lowestoft. The Dockside Pink Zone was again home to the Oxford-Cambridge Growth Corridor this year, and I caught up with Dr. Andy Williams, Chair of the Oxford-Cambridge Supercluster Board, keenly awaiting the arrival of Science Minister Lord Patrick Vallance. We are here in, one of the most exciting, probably the most exciting pavilion of UKREiiF. Let the others sue. And I'm here with Dr. Andy Williams, Chair of the Oxford-Cambridge Supercluster Board, who seems every year to pull something fresh, exciting, new out of the bag. Andy, how has your UKREiiF been thus far?
It's been really interesting. I think you've actually hit the nail on the head. I think this pavilion and where we are in the Oxford Growth Corridor pavilion at the moment, there is palpable excitement. What I've seen with what's happened in the Oxford Growth Corridor over the last 6 to 12 months has been more impressive than I've seen over the previous 8 years. And that is a conscious decision by the government to put its bets on a region which is already growing. Now that comes with lots of responsibilities, and you'll see in some of our sessions the need to make sure those benefits spread across the wider UK economy. But essentially it's one of the few areas where we're still seeing investment, we're still seeing growth in a really tough environment for the group. People here are developers and planners and investors, and what they're struggling with at the moment is business demand. And we're in the one few regions where that business demand is generally holding up, partly as a consequence of government investment and partly because of all the capabilities and stuff we talk about all the time.
So what's your role in kind of helping government, I suppose, I don't want to say match funding, but making sure that whatever the government gives you can sort of make sure leverage in private money as well?
Well, we're very different from other areas. There is a lot of private money, there's a lot of private companies, so we have to take the heavy load, frankly. And the things the government can help us with are more the basics. And we've heard about the sewage and water problems in Cambridge, the connectivity across the region. So it's really that infrastructure which has been lacking for many, many years. And that is what's constraining growth in our corridor. Slightly different from other corridors, we're still trying to attract the initial businesses. But ours are saying they would grow if the infrastructure is better. So we do focus on government doing that, us doing pretty much everything else.
I mean, yes, that was very much a theme that Matthew Pennycook yesterday, and listeners will have heard you in yesterday's session in a podcast that went out overnight, talking to that. And to what extent can you sort of attract that government investment into infrastructure and private investment with kind of the exciting stories of what's possible? Because you are kind of like got the best toy box in the whole blinking shop, as far as I can see.
Well, and I think that's the key. So we have we call them the capabilities, the scientifically unique things we do, and they actually exist all over the country, but they're particularly dense in the Oxford-Cambridge region. And so what we have to do is it's more your job, it's the storytelling. Big companies. So what you find is that large organisations looking to go somewhere, actually it starts with hearts and minds. So what they're looking for is stories of success, key capabilities, livable environments, before they even consider the space they go into. And that's what I've been trying to get over to people this year at UKREiiF. It's not really about sites in the Oxford-Cambridge region. In the rest of the country, it's about how do we redevelop brownfield sites. Those sites are already there, they don't have industry. In the Oxcam region, it's much more precious. If we build a site, it's either going to be on greenfield site, or it's going to be on the edge of a town. It's not going to be as popular. So we really have to be sure that we've decided what we're going to do and where we're going to do it. And so it's really highlighting those capabilities, highlighting those narratives, highlighting those stories, so people know what they're coming into before we go down to the precious land release, which enables those things to happen.
And then enabling those things to happen as well, I think, will unlock lots of benefits for those communities. I heard in a session earlier about just 5 homes, meaning a village could keep its pub because the chef could finally afford to live in the village. I really envy you, because you are, as I say, got a really exciting brief. And what we saw yesterday was that real great collaborative spirit that's really making your job, I would think, a lot easier.
There's a lot more collaboration across the region than there used to be, and it's covering both central and local government. We all know we need economic growth, and then we look at the negative consequences. So you talk about housing. I think absolutely right. So I live in South Cambridgeshire villages who are worried about the housing growth. But on the other hand, they're worried about their pub closing and their shop closing, and they're wondering why. So there's a balance there. But I think I'd bring it more back to opportunities for young people, which then leads to where the housing needs to go. We've got to make sure, and what we talked about also this week, is alongside the ARC University groups working across the region now, we've got the HEFE colleges working across the region. And that's critically important. We've talked about this before. The jobs being created can't be just to suck more people into the region. We've got to make sure there's more opportunities for the young people within our region, which actually means fewer houses, but the people in those houses have got the greatest opportunity. So there's a balance to be met between expanding the housing to allow the growth, but also to make sure the communities that are already here are benefiting from that growth as well.
So last question, what are you taking away from UKREiiF? Well, it's last two-part question. What are you taking away from UKREiiF, and what is Andy Williams's number one on your to-do list Friday morning?
Again, having come here again, there's too much about sites and not enough about capabilities. So we're working on capabilities, we're working on capability maps, and we're going to map it not just within our region, but across other regions as well. So one of the seminars you'll hear later in the day is how we're working with the Northern Growth Corridor. What capabilities exist in the Northern Growth Corridor which don't exist in the Southern Growth Corridor, and making sure that opportunities also flow to Liverpool and Manchester. And I know one of your key things is, then how do they go to Norwich? How do they go to Bristol? So if you have a much better understanding of what our core capabilities are, that's what will drive companies to come and invest here.
And as I stepped out into the not quite sunshine, I leapt on the opportunity to chat with someone pivotal to the success of the Oxford-Cambridge Growth Corridor.
Lord Patrick Vallance, I apologise for leaping on you, but it was too good an opportunity to miss. We're outside the Oxford-Cambridge Growth Corridor, which is really a fantastic driving force for the region. What's your message to the doubtless packed room this afternoon?
That this is the big growth opportunity we have. It's a chance to really take this outstanding science and discovery that takes place and turn it into companies that grow, create employment, and in doing so, make the whole area one that's affordable, easy to access, move across easily.
Could you just clarify, what's your role in creating that narrative?
Well, my role, I'm a minister with other responsibilities, but the Chancellor asked me, would I take this on as champion? And the reason I did that is government doesn't work well across boundaries. And the idea here is to make sure it joins up, focuses on one thing, which is to get this done, and to bring together all of the different ministers necessary to make that happen. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, Eastern Promise is all about celebrating that and shouting to the world. I mean, a quarter of our audience over the last 2 years has been in the US, 40% of whom are in California. Don't ask me why. And it's really important that you're here to put that ministerial gloss on it and show everyone that the government is serious about taking these opportunities forward. What more can we do as the East of England to support your work?
Well, I think this is about everybody. It's about trying to get everything from construction to making education work across the corridor, to making it a nice place to live, to housing development. And it is that total approach from government through to local authorities, through to businesses, through to citizens demanding that actually is going to make this work. This can't be a top-down, done-to thing.
No, but I think there is that collaborative spirit, that well of optimism and willingness to seize the opportunities here that must be really refreshing for you and really fantastic for you to plug that back into government.
Well, I was at a meeting not long ago with a series of regional leaders from across the UK, and it just so happened there were two from the Oxcam Growth Corridor area, and they suddenly spoke up and said to the others, well, the thing that's happening here is we're all talking to each other and we're making this work, and there used to be a lot of different groups trying to do different things. We're now working together, and I think that is what we really need to get, and we need to do that everything from, the new National Forest through to the latest lab.
That's fantastic, yeah, absolutely. Lord Vallance, you're a very busy man, so I won't take up any more of your precious time. Thank you so much for talking to Eastern Promise this afternoon.
Science Minister, Lord Patrick Vallance. To Peterborough! Well, not literally. The huge potential being unlocked in this at once ancient and modern city was on everyone's lips. And leader of Peterborough City Council, Dr. Shabina Qayyum, was keen to tell Eastern Promise why that is.
We are the 5th fastest growing city within the country, and actually today one of the things that we highlighted in other panels was the fact that our youth population is the fastest growing in the country, and we've got a real theme in Peterborough around investing in our young people that in turn becomes an opportunity for growth and prosperity, not just in Peterborough but around the region. Now, in terms of this panel, it was really encouraging to see Peterborough being plugged in on many variables. It's obviously one of the key areas that connects the north of the country to the south. It's on the main train line. It's also on the A1. And in line with local government reorganisation and tying in a lot of the services in terms of growth, development, investment here, there is a real opportunity to tie the regions that are adjoining Peterborough to become part of that big focus on growth and regeneration in the wider region as well, with Peterborough not being left behind. I think what we've seen historically is a real culture around focusing on the big university city type areas. Well, we're a fairly new university city. We've got the growth and population, a fantastic university that has been ranked nationally. There is a real opportunity for growth and development and bringing in the right kind of investment that generates those high skill jobs and employment. And having a look at the panel today was really encouraging about the quick wins, as Jackie, I think, alluded to. And Peterborough can be very much part of that story.
Well, lots of people, and I've just come hot from the Norfolk Suffolk Unlimited Pavilion. People even there are talking about Peterborough as fundamental to the growth of the region, particularly in relation to the Greater Cambridge. It's like the Greater Cambridge picture doesn't really work unless Peterborough's plugged into it to deliver the great thoughts and the big ideas that are coming out of there. We recorded, and you've just been giving me a brilliant clip for it, at the ARU Peterborough, the beginner's guide to Peterborough, with people talking about how to get to know the ecosystem, what they need to know about Peterborough, where they need to go to network and so on. What would your advice be to someone who's looking at Peterborough and really excited about the potential there as a hotbed for investment and the place of the future?
I think that if you have a look at its location, first of all, it is within reach. We've got a 45-minute fast train to King's Cross into London, so connectivity is really key when you're having a look at investment. Then you have a look at the growth of the city, the population burst, I would like to say. And then we've got our and we can't dismiss ourselves from talking about the collaborative political angle. So we've got an MP who is working with us locally, myself in leadership alongside the Cambridgeshire Mayor, Paul Bristow. And it's about putting the big P politics to the side and actually working together. And when you have that plethora of collaboration, automatically it attracts investors into looking at the fact that we're not making investment and growth about a political plaything, but we're actually really focused on the opportunities within the area that can often be a put-off to investors who see that there's a lot of infighting that takes place. But I think that we're an example of actually collaboratively working and establishing the grounds for a mayoral development corporation as well, and we're forming a growth board within Peterborough to make sure that that becomes a reality. So there are many good things and many good news stories coming out of the city, and in terms of encouraging investors, the first thing is that you will have much more of a collaborative working relationship where we put big P politics to the side, irrespective of the changes, and want to see growth happening.
Leader of Peterborough City Council, Dr. Shabina Qayyum. Like the branded UKREiiF yo-yo I am, I bounded straight back to the Norfolk and Suffolk Unlimited stage in the purple zone to listen to the panel on extending the Oxcam arc. In the chair, John Huddleston, Group Public Affairs Senior Manager for UK Growth and Investments at insurance giants Aviva.
I'm John Huddleston from Aviva. I'm sure many of you will have heard of us, but we're the UK's largest insurer, 22 million customers, serve 1 in 3 corporates, and one of the largest institutional investors in the UK for over 100 billion. And East Anglia is our spiritual home. The innovation economy is really important to us as we look to deploy more pension capital into innovation. And I'm really, really pleased to be involved in this discussion because I'm struck by that cliche about sort of investment doesn't look at boundaries and lines on maps. It's a bit more fluid than that. It's looking for what are the connected networks, what are the criteria around that supports investment decisions. So that's the talent, space, momentum of places, and that's what East Anglia has. And it's also about how it's linked into economic drivers. And again, they don't need to be in the certain geographical lines. It's about how do you knit those things in to create future pathways, future pipelines, and not do things in sort of isolated pockets of innovation, which lends us onto this, I think, very mature discussion about how can you look at being a natural extension around the Oxcam arc and sort of bring that all together.
Alongside John, Matt Francis, Head of Science and Technology for Oxford Innovation, who run many innovation centres across the UK, including the epicentre at Haverhill in Suffolk. Nick Watson, UK Director at OCO Global, and Sandra Dineen of Bullen Group. Eastern Promise is particularly blessed that we've built warm relationships across the region, so this was a topic close to my heart. Unsurprisingly, I felt sufficiently moved to chime in.
I've noticed in other places such as the Cambridge and Peterborough Pavilion and Oxcam, there's already sort of references and talks about this, so we're not. It's a furtive space to think about, but I think questions from the audience to members of the panel would be very useful.
Thank you very much. Mike Rigby, Eastern Promise. You mentioned that, and we literally interviewed Andy Williams at the Oxcam Growth Corridor earlier today, and it was he, not I, that brought up the topic of Norwich and extending the Growth Corridor. Now, from the work I do, I see that there's an open door at the Cambridge end, and the reticence is further down. And forgive me, I feel like there's slightly frustrated sitting here because I really don't understand why we're not talking about this like it's already a fact. because it is. I mean, we've had Bug Biome moving into the research park. We've got Zampler. We covered this on the podcast, working with the Quadrum Institute, and it was people from Zampler saying, you're 50 minutes up the road, we're dealing with live samples, it's a no-brainer. So perhaps you can calm me down, maybe, but if such a thing were be possible, and say, where is our narrative that we are doing something complementary? The era of competition is over, and we are here, and we are open for business and willing to work with you, and just making those connections and bringing those Cambridge people into the conversation.
I was going to say, how's calm you down? I can't really get you taken out. So, yeah. So the point to your question is perhaps you say, yes, it is already happening, but it's more about articulating what the offer and sort of the specifics within it about what, I'm not using secondary as a sort of regularly as it meant to burn that, but it's going to have to be something that's a little bit sort of nuanced. So I think you can say, yes, it is already happening, but what are the things and the bits that can make it genuinely make sense to be a natural flow, I think is still to be something we should talk about. But I welcome views from down the panel. Sandra, you...
I mean, I do agree it's about the narrative, and I think it's been really interesting to watch what's happened with the Oxcam corridor and how it's evolved. And I think one of the key factors there has been the business leadership there rather than institutional leadership, which I think we've lacked to a degree in the Norwich economy or the East Anglia economy. Particularly, I think we were slow to get spin out at the research park, and actually we're being more successful in terms of spin in now, I think, in some ways, than we are spin out, which is really interesting, and understanding why that is. And the other thing that's really driven Oxcam is having a really clear narrative, not trying to say all things to all people. I think sometimes we have a habit of trying to kind of spread our jam so thinly that people don't really know what we're trying to say, and we need to get better at that. But the other thing is evidence base. I mean, the fact that we struggle to provide the really strong data on what we do, what we've achieved, how we do it, and what we could give people is something where I think we've got further work to do, which the Oxcam corridor are very good at.
And I guess just picking up on that last point about data, the Growing Together Alliance did a piece of work recently that showed exactly your point, Mike. It is happening. There's data that says these companies that start at some point within the Oxcam growth corridor are moving, and they had a specific number that obviously now I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's there. Go and look it up. So it's a nice piece of work. I guess my thing is, there is a PR piece, but there's also a point about making the most of it, not being complacent, working out how to harness what is going to be a huge amount of investment from UK government into a corridor, and being proactive and positive about that, understanding what the data tells you about what's happening already, trying to get a little bit of insight into where to move next so that you can drive the data to continue like that and to continue delivering for East Anglia as well as the UK as a whole. My whole thing is, it's not about these regions. To some extent, it's meaningless. You mentioned Bug Biome, which was going to be another one of my examples. They popped up in the inquiry list for every one of our innovation centres that have laboratories, from Bristol through Oxford to Haverhill. They landed in Norwich. But the point is, that's the ball game, is making sure that all regions around the UK are thinking together, playing to their strengths, seeing where the money's going, not being competitive, but being collaborative and making the most of it for everyone, basically. That's my view.
Yeah, and just two very quick points. So, first of all, if it's happening already, that peer validation is extremely powerful for international investors, especially, if you're, say, talking to an American investor. If there's an American company that's trodden that path before, that gives them a lot of reassurance. So we should be using that if indeed, those cases are there. The second point is, investors don't look at the place propositions that we necessarily think that they look at, right? So for us, it might make sense to talk about East Anglia as a region, but investors will look at the proximity to, other towns, cities, whatever. It's incredible how close together everything is in the UK for an American investor. Yes. They measure their commutes in hours, not miles. So all of our sort of, regions are pretty well connected for them. And it's incredible that, to take another example, Liverpool and Manchester, look how close together they are on the map, and yet they're marketed as quite separate propositions. For an investor, that those two things are very, very much linked. So, yeah, I think the geographical proximity is it's a complete no-brainer for investors who are used to looking at much larger pieces of land.
That was John Huddleston, then Sandra Dineen, Matt Francis, and finally Nick Watson. Afterwards, I caught up with Sandra to ask what she made of the discussion.
Sandra, that was a really interesting panel, and not just because I chimed in yet again. Can you just give us the key messages as you saw them that you wanted the audience to take away? Because it was a really packed out room.
I think the key message for me was it's already happening, so why aren't we embracing this and maximising the opportunity while it's here and now?
You're absolutely right. How do we amplify, show and not tell?
I think it stems from the fact that these have grown up as very scientific institutions. So when key people at those institutions talk about things, they start with the science rather than the outcome. What we need to do is get them to talk about the outcome first. Then it's much more translatable to individuals and people and investors, because what they want is a result, not to know all the technicalities behind it. And I think it's really interesting that the more that somewhere like the Qayyum Institute becomes more of the sort of public-facing side of it, the more people can readily see the impact on human health rather than having to understand the full bit of the sort of plant science behind it.
There is that beautiful sort of area overlap in the Venn diagram with life science and plant health and all these things where the opportunities must be so rich and so exciting. We know of the Cambridge-Norwich Tech Corridor. How do we drive that forward and unlock those conversations and bring the Cambridge ecosystem that my experience is very keen to be part of that conversation? How do we unlock that?
So I think the point that you made, that I think the door is open in Cambridge and it's more resistance at the Norwich end, but I think it's not resistance on purpose, it's a lack of understanding about how that connectivity can be a win-win, because I think historically people have seen things move to Cambridge and the idea that you have to preserve them in Norwich, which is not how the ecosystem works. So I think we need to do more education at our end for people to say this is ultimately a win-win. And people like Andy Williams, who you spoke about earlier, he's been down, he's talked to people, you know, and they're very happy to do it.
I don't have to bring it up. He does it himself.
Yeah, absolutely. The bit I think we need to do is be much clearer on our narrative and the fact that we're not frightened by working with collaboration, that we actually embrace it and we see the benefits for us, but also for the UK economy.
Sandra Dineen of Bullen Group. That panel on extending the Oxcam arc was one of many topics I was fortunate enough to be able to raise with O2H Group co-founder and co-creator of the phenomenon that is Cambridge Wide Open Week, Prashant Shah.
I think 2026 UKREiiF has been absolutely astonishing. I think it's been highly productive. I think once you've been here 2 or 3 times, you really get a sense of where to be, what to go to, who to meet, where to contribute, and I got so much out of it in just 1.5 days. Brilliant.
That's fantastic, because has this been sort of the best year you can remember? God, this is a leading question, but the best year you can remember in terms of optimism for people working in your space, in particularly in sort of startups, incubation, entrepreneurs and innovators?
I think when you speak to a lot of the leaders here from the councils, government, the institutes, the investors, there's a lot of optimism here, and the sense I get that people are much more willing to kind of drop their egos, work together, work to a larger mission for the UK. So much of the conversation has been joining up Cambridge and Manchester, or Oxford and Birmingham, or London and Cambridge, or innovation corridors, or the work across the arc as well. So I think for me that's been the biggest takeaway, that sense of really wanting to work together.
It's quite interesting you mention that, because I've just come from an Oxcam-related event at the Norfolk and Suffolk Pavilion, talking about engaging Norwich with Cambridge and the Oxcam arc and extending it out to Norwich. And I was able to quote Andy Williams, who brought Norwich in himself when I interviewed him earlier. And I'm just really interested in your views on that and how there's kind of a reticence. How do we unlock that in your experience? How do we... my view is to talk about it like it's already happened, but how do you... What's the Prashant Shah methodology for unlocking that potential?
My methodology is we're doing the Cambridge Wide Open Week. We've added Oxford and London this year, and we hope to add Norwich to it next year and have a day and kind of join up the conversation along with Oxford, London, Cambridge. And what exciting science and research is going on in Norwich, in the Norwich Research Park.
So tell us some more about what's happening, because it's not that far away.
We're really excited. We've got a great lineup of keynote speakers. We've got a really interesting venues in London and Oxford. We're extending the Cambridge-wide venture tour, which is to Oxford and London, which means we've got the leading investment funds showcasing their best companies in London and Cambridge, London and Oxford on June 11th and 12th. So Oxford June the 11th, London June the 12th, and that's the extension of the Cambridge Wide Open Week.
You can consistently every year expand and you're ever more ambitious for what you can do, and I love that, because you see it. I don't want to say it sorted, but it's kind of like that. You see where you want to go, and you just go. I mean, what is it about Prashant Shah that enables that? And not just Prashant Shah, the whole O2H team.
Well, that's the secret magic ingredient. Ajit Singh, who's kind of directing this much more than me now, and is kind of almost running it end to end, has done a brilliant job of connecting with everybody across the ecosystem, and this wouldn't be possible without Ajit Singh kind of driving the whole agenda, and he's done a fantastic job.
So how can UKREiiF top this in 2027? I can't imagine any circumstances you won't be here. So what does it need to do to really kind of make you go home with a skip in your step?
A really damn good question. I think they can definitely improve the Wi-Fi next year.
Yes. Although the press one isn't that bad, but yeah, it isn't great.
And the 5G's been awful. So that would really help.
Well, we've got to be upbeat.
And apart from that, I think it would be really interesting to bring more other international people to this conference. I think the energy that we're generating is very strongly UK-centric in terms of the attendees. And I think if we could get international investors, international politicians to kind of join the UK investors, the UK politicians that do attend, I think that would be fruitful to show the international potential of what we've got here.
On that note, you remind me that at the last check on my widget that counts all my listeners and all over the world, in the last 24 months, a quarter of that audience has been in America. Of that, 40% is in California. The rest are a sort of mix of Virginia and New Jersey. What is your message to those listeners with that international view in mind?
Well, the message to the international audience is the UK is a powerhouse of life sciences. It's a powerhouse of tech and AI, and the two are coming together very beautifully in the UK. AI has the potential to kind of really cut short and make more productive life science research. If you look at all the new modalities that are happening here, there's an explosion of new kind of commercial opportunity where you can mix life sciences and AI. And I think the UK is at the very centre of that. And all the stakeholders here are hungry, working together, and there's a lot of great investment opportunities in the UK.
Prashant Shah there, like myself, a UKREiiF veteran. Visitors to the Norfolk and Suffolk Pavilion in the Purple Zone will have noticed upon entrance the fantastic screens featuring AI avatar Penny, intended to provide simple, straightforward help and assistance to anyone who might need it. Created by 1956 individuals and SKC Studios. On hand from the aforementioned were Dominik Vagner and friend of the show, former guest Kelly Boosie. Dominik and Kelly very kindly offered to demonstrate exactly what Penny could do. I just wasn't really ready for what happened next. Keep listening, Mum. You're going to love this bit.
Hi, Penny. Can you tell us more about...
Absolutely. Feel free to ask your question whenever you're ready. I'm here to help.
Penny, can you tell us about Mike Rigby? She might not know because it's on plugged in.
Mike Rigby is a brilliant campaigner for engaging audiences and making events even better, especially in support of market towns and local businesses.
Not as much as I did.
He played a key role in the Love Your Market Town conference, helping to create a positive and practical experience for everyone involved.
There you go, singing your praises.
I didn't even pay any money.
Thanks, Penny.
That's marvellous.
It's great, isn't it?
I love it already. I love you already, Penny. You're fantastic. Thank you. Well, Dominik Vagner, tell us more about this, this goddess, this avatar who's just sung the praises of the Eastern Promise. I am indeed.
There she is, butting into our conversation.
Tell us more about what Penny does.
Absolutely. So I'll give it a bit of context. So we're from SKC 1956 individuals. We're just based in the epicenter in Suffolk. And,
at Haverhill.
At Haverhill, sorry, in Haverhill, you do. We're a software startup. We're comprised of about 25 people at the moment, and we build conversational AI avatars that really you can have a myriad of use cases, whether that's in a retail space, a receptionist space, or even in museums at the moment.
I mean, it won't just obviously be Penny. I would imagine you have lots of avatars. Where are they being used at the moment?
So we have a couple live installations. We have one at Leeds Castle. She's called Queen Eleanor, and she's a 13th century queen that is actually
fantastic.
alive.
That's the Leeds Castle, which is weirdly in Kent.
It is, correct. Something that a lot of people get quite confused about when we say Leeds Castle, and they're like, oh goodness, is that the one in Leeds, or is that the one 40 minutes from London? So,
yes.
Yeah, she's absolutely stunning because she has a personality of her own, and that's actually something that we can program as part of the technology and the algorithm that we build behind it. And so Queen Eleanor is quite a sassy, she's very diplomatic, she doesn't have time for frivolities, as she likes to say, and we've seen so much engagement actually with Leeds Castle, and Leeds Castle are an amazing champion for our product as well.
So what's the future looking like for these fantastic avatars that, you know, really put a human face on that interaction and possibly free up human staff for perhaps more intense tasks?
It's a great question, Mike, and I think what the use case that we see, there's really two ways that we can see it working quite well in sort of different industries. We have, like we said, just the museum product that we have. We call it the asset, and that's a creative asset that really we can essentially create a historical representation of a character and bring that to life, essentially. But we also have the utility aspect, and that's, let's say, retail spaces where you can have an avatar in an actual Sainsbury aisle or a Tesco aisle, where there's a lot of opportunities for wayfinding, but product recall and inventory management as well.
A new face to UKREiiF this year is Shiv Malik, co-founder and CEO of ACDC and one of the two proponents of Forest City 1. I asked him what the reception had been like for his proposals.
It's been incredibly exciting. Met all sorts of people. It really is the conference to be at if you want to get things done in the development world. If you're trying to build a city, you're clearly going to have to put together a massive coalition of people, whether that's investors, developers, architects, politicians. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So it's been wonderful just kind of actually just getting to know people face to face, getting to meet them face to face. You know, it's not the same as with Zoom, right?
Yes.
So it's been brilliant. It's been brilliant.
So what's the reception been like to what you've been talking about in Forest City?
We've got some fans, which is lovely to know. People who've come out of the woodwork and gone, I've been following you for all these many months. And then you're like, and then they go, and I love it. So we've got that. Maybe that's about 20-30% of people who've approached. And then there are those who have heard about it and tried to sort of keep away. So it's a mixed bag. What's interesting is also listening to people at the panels who've just come out of something on the Cambridge Biomedical Campus with the Mayor of Cambridge and Peterborough, Paul Bristow. And it's clear that they need integrated solutions, right, for all these things. You can't just treat housing or commercial space or transport in their own little silos. They need to be tackled strategically together. And Forest City, in a sense, allows, I think, people to go, right, here's a project through which those things can be tackled together strategically. This is also about timing, right? With startups, the advice is always, look, if you're on the wrong timeline cycle, you'll never win. It doesn't matter how good the idea is or how brilliant the execution is. And with this, in a sense, we've come along at the right time where people have finally realized, oh, right, okay, yes, we're fed up with the old model of doing things where developers just stick to just that housing. It's someone else's problem to worry about water. And I think we've come along at that moment where people have gone, right, we've got to have that integrated solution. I mean, again, just one quick example. There are houses in Cambridge that have been built, they're brand new spec, you turn the tap on, no water comes out, not being connected. That's insane.
What's the rest of UKREiiF looking like for you?
So we've got a panel tomorrow that I'm speaking on. It's about private rented sector and how the future looks.
And after that, you just taking in the magnificence of it all?
I am. I've got various different meetings. In fact, my diary tomorrow is pretty packed. I've got all sorts of housing developers, people. It's pretty packed. Got some prominent people who would like to meet and actually just kind of look me in the eye and see if I'm
fantastic.
The real deal or not.
I will let you, hopefully, brave the rain or enjoy more of the reception, whichever you're going to do first.
The good news is that this event just had a goodie bag, and inside it is an umbrella.
Hang on, where's my brolly?
Shiv Malik, who's been interviewed in longer form for this podcast for release later in the year. Mass rapid transit around Cambridge is another area where opportunity and potential are hand in hand with, shall we say, the potential for what Director of Cambridge Science Park Jane Hutchins calls a fun round of public engagement. Here's a quick flavour of the panel.
When I was MP there, and I kept meeting various secretaries of state and for communities, housing, local governments, and they just kept saying, Cambridge, you're the economic hotspot of the UK, and we absolutely need growth in the UK, and everyone across the country is looking to us to try and deliver it. So if we could go to you, Jane, first, as Director of the Science Park, what is the need for mass rapid transit in Cambridge?
One of the most frequent questions that I'm asked when a company is considering setting itself up in Cambridge or moving to Cambridge, either from elsewhere in the UK or from overseas, is how do we access the talent and where does the talent live? And where the talent lives is a really complex question because, as we all know, I think Cambridge, being a medieval and ancient and highly protected city, now has a chronic shortage of housing, particularly affordable housing. And we draw on a very wide catchment zone. Where people live is quite a long way away. And to get into the city, too many of them have no alternative but to drive.
Transport is one of the constraint issues. So how do we, remove that as a constraint issue to enable that growth, to enable that confidence into the market, to enable that investment to continue? And we've got to deliver this strategic outline case before the end of the year.
The challenges in Cambridge, I see that the first challenge and the really critical one is the city centre, as you rightly said. Not congested, but constricted. So very difficult to put a system through a city that is that tight. However, a VLR could be exactly the mechanism that you can use to do that. And there are ways of doing that and joining it up at either end of the city centre with a conventional system or bus system, for example.
Afterwards, I was lucky enough to grab a few minutes with some of the panellists, and I asked Jane Hutchins first what her tenants were looking for from an improved transportation system.
The main thing they want is transport that works for them and for their staff, that works in peak hours, so they can genuinely get out of their cars, because none of us like sitting in the jams on the A14 in the morning. No. So they're looking for a frequent, cheap, tempting public transport system. And the other interesting ask I get quite a lot is nighttime service as well. So we all focus on 9 to 5, the working day, the rush hour, but a lot of the companies have staff who work very irregular hours. They might be monitoring experiments, they might be just working shifts because they've got international customers and suppliers in the Far East or in the West Coast of America. So they work unconventional hours. And we have armies of cleaners who come on out of hours as well. For my sins, I've been on the Science Park at 2 or 3 in the morning on rare occasions, and there is always activity there.
Yeah.
A lot of the ask is how do our staff travel out of hours safely and affordably?
Hi, I'm Philip Parker. I'm Technical Director at the Cambridge Growth Company. Success is really when we can actually get past these elements of the study and the strategy and actually get released to be able to do delivery work, when we can actually start to build a system and support a system that could be a multimodal system, that could integrate all the great schemes that are already in place at the moment, link things together, get those connection points sorted and resolved, unlock that congestion issue. It's all about enabling people to get where they need to go from and to across the piece.
Peter Cushing, Light Rail Commissioner for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. I could give you countless examples of magnificent tram networks around Europe, just, relatively close at home. They're all fantastic, but is it a panacea for everywhere? No, it's not. It won't fit in some places, it's not the right solution because it's capable of moving a lot of people very quickly, and not everybody needs that. They need a different solution for a different problem. So it's a case of fitting the solution. Cambridge has a unique opportunity in being able to provide the solution and then steer the development around it.
Peter Cushing, living the 00 dream. It was a hot, eventful, exhausting, rainy UKREiiF, but it was also tremendously fun, exciting, and any opportunity to talk about, to showcase the East of England, in whole or in part, is to be embraced. And that's it. That's the end of day 2 and our entire coverage of UKREiiF 2026. I have been Mike Rigby and will be so again next time when normal service is resumed and we're back in the East of England for the Norwich Gaming Festival. I'll be in discussion with Mark Wickham, Director of Computer Arts and Technology and Programme Director for Games, Animation, VFX and Creative Computing Courses at Norwich University of the Arts. Rebecca Cockerill, Specialist in Employment Law and much more besides from our friends and partners at Mills & Reeve. And Robin Milton, Founder of Fairer Games, indie gaming guru and member of the Norfolk Business Board. What will we be discussing? Only how we can strengthen and amplify Norwich's growing status as a magnet for indie game designers into a regional hub of excellence. No need to know your PlayStation from your Xbox. Just turn on, log in, and get ready, Player One. That's all booting up for you next week. Until then, bye for now. To hear other episodes of the Eastern Promise podcast, and to find out more about what we do, go to our website at easternpromise.org.uk. Eastern Promise is a Pudding Shed production in proud association with Mills & Reeve. Achieving more together.